Welcome to Digital Civility. My name is Matt. We all have tiny waters. I hope you had some as well.
We did water shots.
Kicking off this panel today, very excited about this discussion. This is a very talkative group in a very good way, very passionate about this subject. Thank you for joining us. First up right here, we have Maura Muro from Twitter. I'll let them introduce themselves here in a little bit. We have Collier from Net Safety Collaborative, and we have Tami Bhaumik from Roblox. My name is Matt. I'm the co-founder, #ICanHelp. We're a nonprofit servicing mostly schools, education, trying to bridge the gap between industry and what's happening on both ends of that and really trying to find some solutions. So first up, Maura, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maura. As Matt said, I work at Twitter on a group called Health, where our goal is to increase the health of the public conversation. And this is founded on our belief that Twitter should be safe, fulfilling, and good for society. I've been at Twitter for about 5 months, so I don't know where all the bodies are buried yet. Don't tell anyone I said that. And prior to Twitter, I was at Mozilla for 4 years, working on their privacy programs. And prior to that, I was actually at the Dark Empire selling advertising and working at creative agencies. So I've sort of seen both sides of this equation. And if we cast our mind back to that era when the age of innocence, where we didn't realize that all of this data that we were leveraging and using and targeting would actually sort of, be something that would make people that would be negative for people. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Collier. Is this on? Yeah. I am a writer and youth advocate and NGO founder. And so I've been on the nonprofit side of all of this for more than 20 years. I guess I'm sort of the most senior person here in terms of age. But so I actually started writing. My first career was as a journalist in the analog days, print, radio, TV, and then the web, a web editor for a major newspaper. And I got bit by the internet bug and had to do kids and digital media all the time. Just became kind of a beat reporter. And I started writing about this whole space, really. Work in the puzzle. Right after the Supreme Court struck down all of the Communications Decency Act except for Section 230. And, I realized for the first time in history we had this clash, truly unprecedented worldwide, between freedom of expression and child protection. And the issue bounced back and forth between the Supreme Court and federal appeals courts, mostly the First Circuit in Philadelphia, different laws, the courts have been confounded. We've all been working this puzzle for a long time, and it just doesn't stop being fascinating. So since the latter part of the last decade, I've been working with the industry. So to some policymakers, I'm in bed with the devil, which reduces my credibility sometimes to some people. But I serve on Facebooks, Twitters, Snapchats, YouTubes, and UBO, Paris-based UBO's safety advisory boards.
I'm Tami Bhaumik, and I'm with a company called Roblox. How many of you have heard of Roblox? Oh, there's more than I expected. So maybe some of you have kids. So Roblox, for those of you who aren't familiar with Roblox, is a technology platform that offers free tools for young people to create experiences, and then we publish it out to the world for them. So we started back in 2006, so we've been around for a while. But we really exploded about 4 years ago. We now have over 100 million monthly active users on our platform. We have over 2 million active developers, young developers that are creating experiences all of the time. And we're due to pay out by the end of this year about $100 million to these developers. We have a virtual economy that we do a rev share with these developers, and we enable learning, STEM skills, programming, and we allow them to create. The vision of Roblox really is about bringing the world together through play. Our founder, Dave Baszucki, dreamed of a world of human co-experience, where people could really enter an immersive world together and learn from one another, socialize with one another. He always talks about how having a 17-year-old woman being able to talk to a transgender person in Germany and communicating and learning from each other. So it's become a very, very positive, very supportive community. We are all about community and respecting the community. So it's an exciting place to be. Because many of our users are very young, they start on Roblox, playing Roblox when they're about 7 years old, and they go all the way on up to their early 20s. We believe that we have a tremendous opportunity to start teaching digital civility at a very young age. Honestly, the older generations, they are pretty set in their ways, but I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to start with this next generation and delivering tools and educating parents so that they can thrive in a really resilient way.
All right, that's our time. Thank you very much. No. So kind of jumping into that, we talked a little bit, we have a general agreement on what digital civility means between the four of us, and there's a little bit of background of talking about the roles of the company and what they're doing. Want to jump in first with Maura at Twitter, particularly around the user experience. Like, how is digital civility like interwoven into the user on Twitter?
So the way that we think about digital civility at Twitter is there's really sort of two things that need to be in place in order for us to foster and support that. One is the sort of explicit, printed guidelines that people that use Twitter can understand for the way that our platform should work. And so on that, we actually revamped our Twitter rules this past year. We went from 3,500 words down to 600 words, and we grouped them into what we believe are sort of the biggest categories of user rights, so privacy, safety, and authenticity of information. Now, 600 words is still a lot, right? I think if you guys heard Jessica this morning, she was saying that it would take us, 76 hours to read through all of the terms and services that we all had agreed to on our mobile phones in the last year. So the other thing that we're trying to do is actually break down and contextualize our rules for different areas in the platform so that when you're going through and doing something and seeing something, you can understand the expectations. So there's that explicit side, and then there's the implicit side, and this is more about the norms. And this is harder because norms are cultural. And so it's important for us that we don't try to dictate the norms, but that we set up the sort of right incentives to think about how we can encourage healthy conversation and healthy behavior. And we've got a lot of different projects underway to help support that. One of the ones I would love to call out is, and actually sort of to Tami's point, is a partnership with Common Sense Media. It's really interesting as well this morning to hear the FCC kind of say, we have to get our kids more connected. They're not on the internet enough. And actually at Twitter, we're kind of like trying to encourage people to take a break from social media and to be mindful about their own well-being. So we've partnered with Common Sense Media to sort of start to create some of that curriculum. And to your point, sort of begin to build that education really early on and give kids that sort of reminder so that later when they're online, they can think back to, oh yeah, I learned about what to do if I'm being bullied, or how I'm going to react or speak with my community if I see something that is upsetting. To that upsetting point, the other thing that we launched, and we've done this I think for about 2 years now, is a program called There Is Help. where we actually partner with the world's organizations around suicide prevention and harm. So anyone that is typing something into Twitter relating to information around suicide or harm, we're giving them that sort of support so they can find external organizations that can support them. We've also done that for things around health and supporting people's physical health. So areas like vaccines, where we can point people to credible information. Sorry, that was a lot.
That was a lot. Much processing. I think along that line, just to contrast it, Tami, you brought up the point, you have such a younger user base. It's similarities and differences, right? So how does digital civility change, evolve, or look differently on, say, on your platform versus Twitter in that respect?
And it is very different. With our users being so young, we look at it as, we have all of these tools. We have features that enable you to set different settings. We have all of that. We have a tremendous reporting system. So if you see something, you can report it. We have an incredible moderation and CS team who reacts very, very quickly. That said, we can't do it to get all alone. So we really spend a lot of time, and this is why I'm so passionate with working with all of the thought leaders in the area, because we really need to be able to educate parents. Parents are so scared of technology, and they've gotten used to not being involved in their kids' gaming world. And we look at this as dangerous as throwing car keys to a kid and telling them to drive without any information or direction. We think that parents need to be thinking about the internet technology in a very, very different way by allowing them to go in even as young as the age of 2 and starting to set rules and guidelines that are right for their family, not being afraid of it, jumping in there. We've seen tremendous bonding, tremendous, and even content that's been created between parent and child that has helped open narratives and deepen relationships. So, we really advocate and we want to educate parents out there that they can be involved with their kids. So we spend a lot of time creating custom content. We are just launching a Facebook civility feed that is not necessarily focused on Roblox, because Roblox is just one small entity. We need to do more, just generally. We are, on the speaking circuits such as these to really try to get the word out. And we're constantly updating our features. We're working with the best and the brightest technology leaders to really make sure that we have features, AI, machine learning that is on the cutting edge so that we can keep our environment safe to allow for creative expression.
No, that's right. And just a couple things to point out. Like, we talk a lot about social media, and what I find interesting is we have a traditional social media company and a gaming company, but are all social platforms, right? They could be dating, it could be. And the other thing about phones, like, I'm kind of looking around the room. I am stereotyping, but how many of you had a phone? Like, you were in high school and your parents said, "Hey, here's a cell phone. Take it. Go do good in the world." Like, how many of you have had a phone that long? How many did not get one until you were in college? How many didn't get one until last week?
Well, somewhere in between college and last week.
There you go. And there's always some people I still have a flip phone. I'm like, party on, dude. And that's where I think the parent gets interesting. Is you're not blaming parents, but it's where and how we decided to engage with technology is so diverse that our relationship with it is going to be very different. And it's really like trying to speak two languages. And working with kids, even from middle school to high school now, or high school to college, we work with a lot of college kids. They'll go down into the high school, middle school, and they're like, we don't even know what they're doing. This is weird. You're only 4 years older, and they're like, it's very weird. You got to check this out. And it's just a small divide. So
just in many ways, it's what I find so fascinating about Roblox is that, you guys are also, while you're involving the parent in the conversation, you're also building enough into the platform so that there's some responsibility there as well. And we feel similarly at Twitter. We feel like the platform and the platforms in general have to take responsibility for setting the right stage for safety, civility. I mean, because there are real things at risk here.
No, and I think that's a great lead-in. Anne, working with these multiple platforms, right? Be it, traditional social, gaming, you name it. Where does that intersect happen between the user and the platform itself? Like, what is the? I had my exact question here. That'd be even better. But what? How do we get the information? How do we get the information to the user and vice versa to kind of really come to like a meaningful, like this is how we just create a better online environment?
How do we get the information to the user? It's really going to take a village. I think we all have to work on this together and help parents, policymakers, or policymakers at the household level as well as the federal level in countries around the world to understand this is really not that much about tech. It's so weird, but this is not. It's not digital civility. It's civility. We have, to your point about social norms are powerful and they're protective, and we don't think about them enough. They're like the wallpaper, right? But we have thousands upon thousands of years of social norms development that we just need to move into cyberspace. We need to open up thought to realize that we have the protective tools. We have, conversations around play in digital and physical environments. And all play, I remember Stuart Brown, the psychiatrist, saying the opposite of play isn't work, it's depression. We all need to get more playful. I think we need to allow, instead of banning technology and fearing technology, we need to see that it's just part of life. We should talk about moral panic, Tami.
Okay, I got a lot to say on that moral panic. There is a book, and it's called A New Childhood by Dr. Jordan Shapiro. I think you guys probably know it. And there's something that's really interesting. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon now, trying to make tech so evil. We are akin to the cigarette companies. We're getting to that point where there's this panic, and everybody is throwing these tech companies as like the evil empire. The reality is tech is a tool, right? So from the very beginnings of time, Socrates said that books were going to be the downfall of society, because it was going to take the place of human interaction. And through the time, through time, there was the radio, there was the television, there were all of these, and now it's simply just another tool, right? The issue is how humans connect to those tools and how we use it. It's not rocket science. This is about common sense. I am never going to sit here with Roblox and tell any kid to spend all their time on Roblox. That just doesn't make sense. It's about balance. It's about, if you ate carrots all day long, the entire every day, that's detrimental. So it's about finding balance, and it's about educating people and stopping the vilification of parents. I can't tell you how many parents I talk to who literally have cried to me because they feel so guilty about how their kids use technology, and we have to stop making each other feel guilty.
So bringing this back to society, here's a quote for you. This is from Professor Nathan Fisk, who came out with his MIT Press book, Framing Internet Safety, a couple of years ago. He writes, "Internet safety panics mark a transition of societal governance from mechanisms of discipline to mechanisms of control." And that's where we are right now because of moral panic. This is why techno panic, predator panic, moral panic, whatever you want to call it, is so destructive, not just because it makes parents feel guilty, which is huge, right? Everybody's so afraid of screen time now when they're not even, it's some sort of undifferentiated mass of time, without all of the different uses of screens factored in. But I fear moral panic. I fear all these new terms that keep getting trotted out, from internet safety to digital citizenship to digital wellness to digital civility. We need to sort of drop the digital because people think that we're talking about some sort of alternate reality that they don't understand, and we fear what we don't understand. And when we're afraid, we freeze. We're all like walking amygdalas, right? We're in fight, flight, or freeze mode as a society, and so there's a great danger of over-regulating, right? And we've got a lot of things to think about and talk about together. So I think it's really important to start not using terms as mechanisms of control, whether it's classroom management or, over-controlling people and, reducing their privacy and their agency.
I think just to add to that kind of thread around, these platforms being a tool and our behavior on social media being a mirror of sort of, our society at large. I did a talk about 2 years ago on sociodigital anthropology, and this idea that we are the things on social media. We are the good, the bad, the ugly, and that, really we have to sort of take, a responsibility for our own humanity. I now do not believe that is the case. And in fact, I work at Twitter because the company is dedicated to getting this right. So I believe, and this is my own personal opinion, that the platforms do have some responsibility to bear, and we do this at Twitter, that we have design thinkers and ethicists and safety and policy people in the room when we are developing our products, because all the incentivized behavior of how long can we keep people on the platform? How else can we sell their data? Even if we're not selling it, we're going to hoover it up and we're going to keep it all within our ecosystem. These are not healthy things for our society. And I agree with the sentiment this morning that our regulators need to be more in touch with how the technology works. But I believe that tech companies are actually understanding that the regulation needs to happen from within. And we are beginning to take steps to get it right and protect the people that are on our platform and broader society as a whole.
So recent to that end, I sat and recently watched a Senate hearing and watched a senator, I will not name, but there was a senator who sat and accused technology companies of not having any features that allowed parents to set the different options. And he was so arrogant, and he had zero awareness of what technology companies have to offer. These are the people who are making different laws and putting out legislation out there there are so many unintended consequences from their actions coming from such an ignorant place. And it makes me so upset that this is what's happening out there. They are reading the sensationalized headlines that are out there and believing them without digging further into what's actually happening. And so I think that's a really, really dangerous point that we as leaders and the responsibility and opportunities that we have to really educate these legislators as to what is really available.
Just real quick, I just had a meeting with a member of the House of Lords in the UK about a week ago, and I was amazed at how little she wanted to hear about the tech companies that she hadn't already decided. She was very civil. She was incredibly intelligent, and she understands media to a great degree. But there's just this absolute set in concrete position that really scares me. And but the most important takeaway I took from that meeting was that the only people they hear from are lobbyists. And I think that's a problem. I don't know what we do about it. And we do in terms of talking with them, because they have very, very smart staffers. Many of them, graduates of law school and, really get policy, and they should be doing better than their bosses, I think, in listening and learning about how tech works. But that's another whole conversation.
That's another different panel.
That's complicated, yeah. But, well, they're just hearing from lobbyists from the tech, and I don't know how we sort of break open pattern, but I think Susan spoke to it this morning.
So kind of along that line, I want to come back to something because we mentioned the UK and other places. I mean, this is a global conversation.
Yeah.
This past year, we had a big push from the Australia e-safety commissioner on safety by design, actually giving it a name. And we're seeing a trend, particularly in startups, of being much more thoughtful about growth and expansion, which you probably wouldn't have seen 10 years ago. How does the safety by design, that discussion, how does that play into, and Maura, you kind of addressed this a little bit already with your conversation, but how does that play into as we either develop new technologies or build out our existing technologies and platforms? How does that play a role in that thinking?
Do you want to take that, or do you want?
I think, let's do Tami first.
So for us, safety by design is an absolute. We have many, many different product teams, and we actually have an engineering and product team solely dedicated to safety and civility. So they actually are involved with every single product team that we have from the very beginning in terms of scoping out the roadmap to make sure we're thinking about it. And I'm going to be really honest, this was very recent, very recent. We were in a mode where, we would create these amazing features in the product, and then we would go, oh, wait a minute. How do we incorporate this chat filter into this feature? And then we would be on our heels trying to figure out how to incorporate it. And, and we could have done better, right? So now moving forward, we are learning from the challenges that we've had before from a product development standpoint. And we're starting to really lean forward into to starting that at the very beginning stage.
And that's true of all the companies I work with. But the problem is, word's not getting out. I don't know how. That's a logjam.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Twitter very similarly is, we call it health by design. We also have privacy by design. Someday we'll have health and privacy by design, but not to kind of get too much into our internal machinations. But yeah, we think very thoughtfully about not just the sort of foundational work that we consider to be sort of health and safety, but every time we launch a product, have we thought through the implications, the ramifications on how we can keep on the people on the platform safe and how that might contribute to the credibility of the information that we have. One of the other things that I think has been a step change for the platforms is the idea of proactively protecting people. So for all of our safety policies, they are human in the loop. So we have, we're not just, there isn't some algorithm up in the sky doing things that we don't know about. There's a human looking at all of the safety policies decisions that we make. And over 40% of those decisions were actually flagged to us proactively. So we use our technology to understand when something abusive might be happening, and then we have a human review it and sort of make that decision. And that's been important because we don't want the burden to solely be on the person using the platform. And we have more work to do there, as I think does everyone, but an important sort of step change for us.
So yesterday I had lunch with a gentleman. His name is Dr. Michael Rich. He's called the Mediatrician. I'm sure you know him. You should I should introduce you. You would love him. But he is a practicing pediatrician at Boston Children's Hospital. He is launching an initiative called the Digital Wellness Lab. And their mission is to bring together literally, and his whole point is we can't do this alone. We have to bring together people from industry, regulators, thought leaders, psychiatrists, actual kids, parents, everybody, humans, not just legislators, but everybody has a seat at the table to really understand how we approach the situation. And he was telling me this story about how this one kid that came in, he plops himself in a chair in his office, and he goes, hey, tell me what's wrong. This kid said, I'm tired of the world shitting on me. Shitting on me. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And it was very apparent that these kids are being talked to as, they're being told what to do, and they're shutting things off. They're not listening anymore. So, at Roblox, we are a 100% user-generated content platform. We've seen the power of creativity and expression. And in fact, our CEO believes we got to get out of their way. We give them tools to create and get out of their way. We make sure there's a safe environment for them to express, but we should not tell them what to do. And we've seen amazing things from a civility standpoint. While, I know that Twitter has this, there are these negative headlines that come out. The reality is that there are always going to be bad actors on the internet, always. And that's a fringe here. There is always going to be the do-gooders. There's that top percent there, but life happens in the middle, and that life that's happening in the middle is really, really cool. We're seeing acts of kindness. We're seeing other kids report to us when they think that there is any sort of dangerous action from a friend that they're playing with in an experience in a game. We're seeing them teach one another how to create games. So, I think that we need to also let our young people teach and lead each other. All we need to do is give them the tools to be able to do it.
No, especially if you want to go onto YouTube and just Google Roblox videos, there are hundreds of them on there showing just collaboration, things they created, stuff that they're proud of. It's a very interesting platform in that respect, the celebration. Back to something you mentioned about life happens in the middle. I know, Ann, you and I, we've talked a lot about the middle layer, right? So, and you both kind of touched on this, but what is, in terms of online safety, what is that middle layer and how does that fit into this whole equation?
Yeah, so this is actually, I think, something that's kind of organically bubbling up as a solution. And it's interesting. What I mean by the middle layer is we have the traditional layer on the ground where, you have 911. I'm talking about user care. Sort of the middle layer of moderation and the middle layer of regulation. But on the moderation side, you have all the user care that we've turned to traditionally, mental health care, crisis hotlines, suicide prevention lifelines, law enforcement, parents, school administrators, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have the cloud, right? At the upper level, you have abuse reporting, and you have terms of service and content moderation and algorithms. But now we need a layer that is actually organically developing without a lot of fanfare. And about over a decade ago, internet helplines were created all over Europe. In New Zealand, you have NetSafe. In Australia, you have the eSafety Commissioner. That's one part of the middle layer that provides context to the cloud because of all of the false positives in abuse reporting. And that layer also refers down to the ground to people who can help with the stuff, because this is about human life, right? Just the content is just the sort of internet digital representative of human life. So you've got to have something that provides context to the cloud, makes abuse reports more actionable, and referrals to the ground. And we also have deletion centers in Europe. There are more and more of these parts of the middle layer that are developing. Facebook's Oversight Board is another example, a fascinating social experiment, the first global one where there's actually going to be a body. This is going on and off, I think. But there's actually going to be a body that doesn't just sort of handle appeals of users, but also help Facebook set policy as an independent body. Whether or not governments around the world will accept that or honor that will be very interesting. And of course, it can't, based on the charter that was released this week, it can't go against any national laws anywhere on the planet. So that's interesting. And then Article 19, the free speech NGO in London, came out with something very similar called social media councils. So people all over the world are talking about this and developing this, and I think we need to do this more consciously together in a very multi-stakeholder, cross-disciplinary way.
So we've kind of seen last year, the UK released their white paper. So we're seeing the extreme, we're seeing the extreme in terms of legislation, regulation. We're also seeing, like we heard today, like the companies, like we're trying to regulate internally. We want to make this better. How do we go about sort of collectively, and there's going to be two parts to this question, but collectively, thoughtfully building in sort of that self-regulation, sharing best practices across the board on the trust and safety side, and really kind of working together to make the internet better as a whole. So for example, you have Twitter and Roblox here, you have Facebook or Snapchat or all these. How do we kind of bring those stakeholders together and have these bigger conversations about safety and just making it better as a whole?
Keep doing what we're doing, having lunch with pediatricians like Dr. Rich, having meetings that involve lots of stakeholder groups. It's early days, so we need to do more of this. We just need to do it more consciously, I think.
And it's happening. So about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were one of 5. So gaming inherently has a toxic culture. And this is awful, right? This is awful for the industry
but
because
not just digital gaming.
Not true.
Right?
Not just true. That's true. And so about 2 years ago, there were about 5 different companies that got together, started something called the Fair Play Alliance. And the whole mission was gaming companies coming together to share best practices on everything, right? So features, policy, A/B testing that they were doing in terms of we know that the carrot is stronger than the stick. And there are a lot of things that each individual gaming company is doing to test things out. So it started out 5, 6 different gaming companies getting together down in LA. And today, there are over 100 different companies that have joined this consortium together, sharing their research, sharing best practices. It is a start. We're not there yet, to be honest with you, but there are good intentions. And to Anne's point, we are very much still in our digital early days. So we are learning. There are also a lot of think tanks. There are Family Online Safety Institute in Washington, D.C. is a great organization that also brings together, I think they have 40 different companies now on board, you name it. You got Disney, you got all the entertainment companies, the telcos on there, and they are sharing best practices as well. And they are moving forward with providing policymakers with real facts or attempting to where they can educate.
Yeah, I mean, I think just echoing what they've said, that we are committed to working collaboratively, figuring this all out together, and that there is a lot happening already.
So there's one of the events that we start with I Can Help is an event called Digital for Good, and it was about finding kids from across the country who are doing something amazing with social media and just giving them a platform to tell their story. And so within that, what are some ways, so an example, Overwatch, which we talked about, and they know it's not perfect, but they saw a 43% increase in trust on their platform, and it had to do with how they were incentivizing positive behavior, appropriate behavior, right? So if you did something good for a teammate, collaborated well together, accomplished a quest by a certain time, then they would get special rewards that they got for supporting each other versus trying to tear each other down. How can we, as either platforms, as users, sort of kind of build in that incentivizing, or how do we even take those good actors and really elevate them to say, like, hey, this is the culture we're trying to get, this is what we want to promote here?
I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about elevating sort of critical information and resources for people. definitely, the teams at Twitter are thinking about that incentivizing healthy conversations and kind of, really putting it in the user's hands so that they can make those choices and take on some of those things. One of the things that we launched in the US just this last week is called author-moderated replies. And this gives the user the ability, someone that has started a conversation, to actually hide someone else's response that they feel like isn't contributing to the conversation, that's spammy, and we've done a lot of research. We soft launched it in Canada. And just last week, we launched it in the US and Japan. And to the norms part, we're already seeing some really interesting sort of use cases in the US versus Japan. But I think more and more, building these incentives into the platform, understanding kind of at scale how they're going to work, and then, committing ourselves to crowdsourcing some of those ideas. I love, that you guys were working with students and kind of bringing those forward.
I think another example is YouTube algorithms downgrading negative comments, right? YouTube did that a while ago, and there are all kinds of opportunities there. I worry a little bit about rabbit holes and recommendation engines and how they can be used for good. I mean, they're fantastic for me when I'm searching for something and I like what's being recommended to me, but I think about the New York Times piece about Caleb Cain, who went down an alt-right rabbit hole for a couple of years and had the intelligence, to his credit, to figure out that it wasn't feeding him intellectually or spiritually. And he actually, to the New York Times credit, he climbed back out of that rabbit hole, and the Times, told that part of the story too. So
we all know that, ignorance is the bane of our society, right? And so really focusing in on education, there are some really interesting tests going on right now and cool features and products being developed right now that in chat, when you type in a certain word or a phrase, it will serve you up the definition and derivation of that. What we found was that over 50% of kids, when they actually learned about what the meaning of what they were saying, what it really actually meant, 50% decided not to send it. That's pretty cool. And what that says is that if we can educate our population as to what these things, these terms mean, that they're just hearing, but they don't really understand what it means, majority of people are really good, right? And they're making the right decisions.
Yeah. Especially kids.
I did have one more question because I really want to know what Twitter is going to do at this next election to make sure we get accurate information. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So if you'd like to talk to Maura about that, I think that is a very good question to ask. Because I don't think Roblox is going to have a big voting platform. I'm just saying. So I want to thank you for your time. If you have questions, please come up, say hi, talk to people, definitely grab them. They're the nicest people in the world.
We got some time for Q&A. Yeah.
The boss man says Q&A. So questions from the audience.
I really enjoyed.
Hold on, I got it up here.
All right.
Hi.
I'll just start in. I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Tami's analogy of handing kids keys and sending them off on the road, and I also feel in many ways we're all in this room looking in the rearview mirror while we're accelerating.
Yeah. And
the windshield isn't very clear. And one question that just I feel would be really helpful for me would be, I'd love to hear briefly one or two outstanding precautionary principles that you have instilled in your organizations and have recognized and feel really proud of, and I'd love to hear what those are.
You can answer that too.
Yeah, I just quickly, I think, so for Twitter, our number one priority across the company is increasing the health of the public conversation. And there's no fine print, there's no caveats to that. And that's why I took the job there, because I believe, and now that I'm on the inside, I can see it with my own eyes, that we are committed to not making trade-offs, that we're doing the right thing in that space. So it helps me sleep at night.
I guess this is going to be like major shades of gray, but my precautionary principle is that both the problem and the solution, when we're talking about kids or maybe any vulnerable class, is individual, situational, and contextual. And there is no monolithic thing called all children. And we need to be talking with parents in that way, turn them back to, it's like safety from the inside out, not from the outside in. Go to your child and with an open heart and an open mind, learn what they love about tech and work with them from that basis.
So I think the thing that I'm most proud of was digital civility did not exist at Roblox a year and a half ago. And we established this and made it a movement within our company. And so a lot of our engineers and our product people that join our company join because of our digital civility initiative. And it's something so important to not only just Roblox, but our generation and the next generation, that I think that's something that I'm most so proud of that we do. I also believe that everyone sitting here in this audience is too old. You know, we all have, we will have this next generation, and we can't screw this up, but we are making decisions for our kids based upon our own personal experiences. And this is a world that we cannot imagine. The rearview mirror won't help us, right? Because our kids are going to be living in a world that literally we cannot imagine.
Thank you. Yes. Quick statement and a question. And I preface the statement by saying that I'm in tech and I agree with the panel on most of the things, but I can't help but wonder if the conversation would go in a different direction if we just took the word technology and replace it with something specific like internal combustion engine or guns. How would the conversation go around regulating and whether the technology is neutral or good or bad? So that was the statement. The question, if the panel could speak more about the metrics they use to quantify the progress of their work. What specifically do you guys look at to measure whether the things you do actually do drive results?
Thank you.
So from a quantification standpoint, again, I'm going to be really honest, it's still very, very early days for us. This whole digital civility focus for Roblox is still we're just still establishing it. But what we have seen is we take a look at sentiment analysis. We take a look at the percentages if we're moving the needle in terms of positive comments. So that's one tracking mechanism that we do. We also, I know this is really anecdotal, but we have been invited and so grateful to be invited for various speaking opportunities. And, you know, we've been told that we're doing so much more than a lot of our other brothers and sisters in this industry, really leaning forward to help educate parents and this next generation. So it's anecdotal. It's not quantitative. We'll get there.
And I think one measure are the major platforms' transparency reports. You can, all users can check those out, and they're getting better and better. For a while, Twitter's were just about government requests for content takedowns, and now the report includes users. So I'll let you.
Yeah, we also have report that we come out with around info ops disclosures. We're the only platform that does this. So when we have a large info ops issue where we have to take action, we then will disclose all of those accounts for researchers, academics, anyone to kind of go and look up and use. So that transparency principle is one that we're actually practicing. I think at a very high level, again, we see digital civility as sort of a part of this broader creation of health, and health includes so many things. It's abuse, it's spam, it's integrity of our information, it's how our defenses from a sign-up perspective are remaining strong. It's ensuring that our customers' accounts don't get compromised, and so we have many different ways from a very granular standpoint for each one of those pieces that we then measure and kind of roll up and look at. And then we have the much bigger, and how do people think we're doing? And that one's a lot harder to move, right? We kind of want to move the internal ones first, right? Make the right decisions from our policies, from our products, from an enforcement and operations standpoint to actually do the work and know that we're doing it, and make sure that we're being collaborative and transparent throughout the process.
Hi. I guess this question is for Anne. You had brought up YouTube's recommendation algorithms, and I know just a couple of months ago, Carlos Maza, he talked about how basically the connection between engagement metrics and YouTube's recommendation engines and their business model actually helped to amplify types of online harassment. So what do you do when the actual business model amplifies toxic and bad behaviors? And maybe this is for Maura too. No?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to be Maura because, I can honestly say I don't represent YouTube and I don't know the answer to that question. When policymakers ask me, why didn't they get that content taken down? It violates terms. How can any of us answer that question besides sheer scale? Or, it's, and the politics of it, right? Washington, accusing all the platforms of being right-wing left-wing and, or anti-right, and having to just navigate all the pressures that are on them to fix it, right? When it's so complicated. If they do try to fix it, then they are overreaching the remit of a private corporation and should never be defining freedom of expression, right? Or if they don't fix it, they're allowing people to harm each other. So I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but that was such a regrettable situation to me personally. Do you want to?
I think just to say that we take that very seriously, and we I think back to that, comment that I made before around being personally proud to work at a company that doesn't have to make those kind of trade-offs. We don't always get it right, but we strive to do so. And we think very thoughtfully around the idea of harm, even offline harm, right? It doesn't have to be just something that's happening on Twitter. We understand that there's real world consequences to all of this. So, I can only speak to kind of those principles, that those are very near and dear to us.
Thank you. Matt, you mentioned that you had talked to all the panelists about what they meant by digital civility, and you come up with a common definition. But I'm curious what that definition is, where it might be documented, where the panelists could point us for more information.
The pressure. I don't know if you guys want to add to that. If I can read my notes. No, I feel like, are you a teacher? I feel like I'm back in school. No, it is brand new. I think for us, I think Anne brought up a good point. It's not digital civility, it's civility. And so a lot of it was, what I'm fascinated by is how nuanced and complicated it is. Because I think what you both hit on is if we make these changes on how we treat each other on these platforms, we also build trust in those platforms, right? So there's a trust component. There is the how we treat each other component, how we support each other, build up, and then celebrate each other component. So all of those things kind of tie in there. And so as we started talking about this, those were the three main areas: is how do we build trust in our platforms? How do we create a great user experience? And digital civility is kind of those things that contributed to that.
Yeah, I am interested from an academic point of view who wanted to write or explore this further.
I don't think there's anything in the literature yet on, digital wellness preceded digital civility. And now I think there's some literature beginning to emerge on that. But, if you just think about the early days of internet safety, it was just people with common sense who knew how to write. Tech journalists and then lawyers and a lot of opportunistic nonprofits. That's what's kind of happening now with digital wellness. They're whistleblowers, and then, the press picks up on it, and then you have people noticing that the companies feel they have to do something, and so advocates emerge and start nonprofits, and here we are all over again. That was 1998 and 9, and here we are starting all over again, and I'm not sure how beneficial it really is. Interesting. Anybody?
So I look at digital civility as a category, right? And that category is still being defined. We have, as I mentioned before, digital civility, that term, it really, it's brand new. I mean, it really just came about a year ago. Yeah. And it's made up of many, many different things. It's about safety. It's about wellness. It's about a lot of different things. But a lot of people talk about digital safety. And I argue with that, right? I think that there are safe things that you can do in the online world, but digital safety is implying that the internet is not safe. And it's really about, I go back to education, right? It's making sure that people have that education to really understand how to use this tool. So, I look at digital wellness or digital civility as taking that first step, and educators are the most important people. We work with camps, we work with, Girls Who Code, ID Tech, and educators around the world, because we have to build in civility and wellness into the curriculum, because right now it's not there. And we have so far to go. And that's where we reach the kids en masse. That's where we reach this next generation, is through, it's not just parents, but it's educators and caregivers. And that's where we want to place that content.
All right. Can we give it up for digital civility? We've got